Well, today, Voices from Oxford is talking to Cathy Cantwell from the Oriental Institute in the University of Oxford. And the reason we're talking to Cathy Cantwell is that she's recently returned from a very, very exciting and interesting visit to Bhutan, which is a Buddhist country, I think something like 70% Buddhist, sandwiched up there near the Himalayas between China and India. So, Cathy, when were you there exactly?
I was there from November to December 2013.
So, at least a month.
Yes.
Yes.
A good month.
And you were there for what reason?
I was there to study the rituals which connected with a research project that we've had on the development of texts and Buddhist practices over the generations.
Yes, and in fact, Voices from Oxford has already filmed some of that conference, hasn't it? So there is a connection between this interview and
the paper.
The papers that were given at that very exciting and interesting meeting.
Absolutely.
Now, what I want to explore is this. As I know well from having seen them myself in Asia, the rituals are very colourful, they sometimes extremely elaborate.
Exactly.
Now, I also suspect, but I want your view on this, that there's a different view of ritual in a country like ours and what you would find in a country like Bhutan or in China or in Japan. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed. In Asia, there's a lot of emphasis on ritual throughout life. Even everyday social interactions are often ritualized in comparison with the contemporary West. Possibly this is less so in some modernized environments in Asia, but in general, and certainly with the monastic community I was staying with, it is highly, the whole kind of everyday life is highly ritualized.
Yes. Now, the other question I want to put to you is this. I'm trying to see whether we can, for our viewers, because they will be worldwide, Voices from Oxford broadcasts, they say, to the four corners of the earth.
Yes.
Now, I think it's sometimes very difficult for Western people to understand what they're seeing when they see ritual.
Yes.
And so the question I want to put to you is this. If you look at the way ritual has changed in the West, particularly religious ritual, it seems to me that it has a lot to do with a particular theology.
Right.
I mean, if you think of the elaborate rituals of the Roman Catholic Church and how progressively through the various Protestant breakaways it became simplified to the point where if you go into some churches now, there's almost nothing there. I mean, a bare table, a few chairs, and that's it. And not even a priest dressed very colourfully. Now, that was partly, wasn't it, that people that were involved in that kind of reformation saw a kind of idolization in some of the ritual. They thought, well, this is precisely what the Bible forbids. You should not have other gods than me. Now, what seems to me to be true from what I've understood of Buddhist practice and ideas is that there was never that kind of conflict, because there wasn't, as it were, a separate thing to be called God in the first place. So you can't have something that's competing with that as an idol.
Yes.
Now that must mean, if that's true, that must mean that the significance of all this for Bhutanese or Japanese or Korean people must be highly different from the significance it has for us.
And in terms of the kinds of Buddhist rituals I was studying, which are really highly elaborate, a 10-day series of practices. You start at 6 in the morning, it goes on to 6 every evening. In this case, the ritual is conceptualized in terms of a transformation of body, speech and mind.
Yes. So there is, viewing it from the viewpoint of a biologist, which I am, it's as though the ritual itself and taking part in that ritual is part of the bodily change that you are expecting to happen. Now, people may not express all of that in those terms, but that's roughly what you say is happening.
Yes, in Buddhism there are some forms of meditation, for example, which are quite conceptual or simply quiet and so on. But in this case, and very often in Tantric Buddhism, the emphasis, the meditation in a sense, is actually involving the whole of one's body, speech and mind. Right. So that, for example, one's having one's perceptions kind of transformed through an involvement which is actually very physical. So, for example, the Lama will be consecrating people, putting something on the head, giving them something to actually drink or eat and so on. So that then there's the chanting, which is the sort of transformation of speech, and then the mind aspect is really to do with there's like the kind of creation of the sort of what they call the divine palace, which is taking place in the temple. Yeah. So that in a sense you all turn into enlightened beings, and you you begin to see yourself, to experience yourself in that kind of manner.
Yes. And that therefore is not just a sort of belief.
No, quite.
It is the experience.
It's the experience.
Because transformation is what people experience.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And in fact, I've often by Lamas been a bit criticised for taking an overly intellectualised position or trying to understand it all conceptually, where I'm told that actually if you simply have a completely open mind and receptive and have faith, then the entire experience can be there, even if you don't actually really understand it.
Yes, indeed, yes. No, I've had the same kind of criticism, actually, because I'm very much an intellectualising and theorising person. And I sometimes even point out to Buddhist thinkers that a parallel between certain ideas of systems biology in relation to the notion of the self and the whole concept of no self in Buddhism. And sometimes the criticism is, well, look, Dennis, forget all of that. You know, yes, we understand it's actually what we experience that is what really matters. But that is exactly what you're seeing in these rituals.
Precisely.
Yes. And I remember somebody else also once telling me, and I said to them, you know, I do meditation. I sometimes go to a temple and meditate with some monks. And they said, well, why do you need to do that? You can do it alone. I said, it's not the same.
Right.
And that's the essence of it, isn't it?
Right.
It's partly taking part in a community.
Exactly.
And even if you're silent, it's still a community. You know that.
Exactly. This is very, very strongly emphasised, in fact, in Tantric Buddhism, that what you have is actually the Tantric community, which then become the different sort of aspects of the kind of divine palace and so on. And they're linked by a kind of what the Tibetans call samaya, which is a kind of bond, which is so powerful, or considered to be so powerful, that it will persist beyond one lifetime. So you'll come together again and again as a Tantric community.
Yes, right.
With the presiding Lama.
Hence the idea that all this contributes to health and longevity.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Well, Cathy Cantwell, thank you very much for talking to us about a wonderful experience.
You're welcome.
And of course our viewers will be able to view some of the footage that you took of these extraordinary ceremonies.
Yes.
So thank you very much.
You're welcome.